Welcome back to our news bulletin. We start with Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, who has sent his resignation to the King. Malaysian Home Minister said Mahathir's party Bersatu has also quit the ruling coalition. It was not immediately clear if Mahathir could form government again with the support of other parties. Mahathir's anointed successor Anwar Ibrahim had accused Mahathir's party of plotting to form a new government with the United Malays National Organization. The tussle between old rivals Mahathir and Anwar has shaped Malaysian politics for decades. Tensions has persisted despite their alliance to win the country's 2018 elections. Moving on, Israeli military says it has bombed the Syrian capital Damascus and Gaza, targeting the Islamic Jihad group. In a statement, the Palestinian group said 2 of its fighters were killed during the bombing in Damascus. Israel's military said its airstrikes followed over 20 rockets and mortars fired from Gaza. Israel's attacks on Syria and Gaza Strip come ahead of the country's presidential election scheduled for March 2nd. Experts say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu can stage more attacks of such nature to influence voters. Meanwhile, Syrians forced to flee the Russian-backed government assault in the country's northwest say they are living in wretched conditions. They said the situation is exacerbated by cold winds and freezing temperatures. The latest offensive targeting rebel strongholds in Aleppo and Idlib has uprooted 1 million people, mostly women and children. More in this report.
At a makeshift camp in Azaz, dozens have crowded into tents in an attempt to find shelter from the harsh winter. Families are sleeping outside by roads and in olive groves, burning garbage to stay warm. Some children have died from the cold. The Raf Ahmed said children sick from the cold were taken to the hospital in an ambulance.
It is very cold. A few days ago, it even snowed. The children got sick and we had to take them to hospital in an ambulance. The situation is miserable.
One woman said her tent collapsed under the weight of snow, leaving the family without shelter. She also said the situation is grim.
That tent you see there fell on us when it snowed. It got ripped, so I left it on the ground. We are cold and tired. You can see the situation with your own eyes. The conditions are at their worst.
Meanwhile, the UN Humanitarian Affairs Agency OCHA said the crisis has reached a horrifying level. It said more than 300 people, many of them women and children, had been killed in Idlib and Aleppo due to the hostilities since the start of the year.
Moving on, 4 people have been killed and 6 others wounded in 2 separate attacks in Iraq's capital, Baghdad and Diyala province. In a statement, police said unknown attackers killed a traffic officer as well as a civilian in eastern Baghdad. The statement said a civil servant was killed in Sadr city by armed assailants riding a motorbike. It said 3 other people were wounded by an explosion and armed attacks in southern sections of the city. Iraq's defense ministry said ISIS killed 1 civilian and wounded 3 security forces in Diyala province. The military group has not yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has asked Iraq's designated prime minister to protect American troops in the country. In a phone call with Mohammad Alawi, Pompeo called for an end to violence and urgent action to address the demands of protesters. Pompeo told Alawi that the U.S. supports a strong, sovereign and prosperous Iraq. The Secretary of State emphasized on Baghdad's obligation to protect coalition forces and facilities. Pompeo also asked Alawi to urgently put an end to violence on protesters and seek justice for those killed. This comes ahead of a parliamentary vote of confidence called by Alawi today. In the Iraqi city of Najaf, the grave of slain paramilitary leader Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes has become a magnet for Shia Muslims with grievances against the U.S. Mohandes was killed in a U.S. drone strike alongside Iran's General Qasem Soleimani early last month. Anti-American sentiment has boomed in the region ever since. This report will now tell you more.
The U.S. long considered Mohandes its #1 enemy in Iraq, but Iraqis know him as a hero who saved the country from ISIS.
He is the man who defeated ISIS and he is a hero. May he rest his peace. His death affected the entire Iraqi army and the Hashd forces.
Today, the paramilitary commander's grave is bustling with visitors around the clock.
They come to visit the grave of Abu Mahdi. All days of the week, the visits never stop. Ever since he died and until the 40th day after his death, the number of visitors has been tremendous.
For now, the people at this shrine are the least of Washington's worries. The US is likely more concerned about armed Iraqi factions that have vowed to avenge the assassination of Mohandas. The country hosts 5,200 US troops, and while they haven't come under attack from within Iraq yet, they still have a target on their backs that wasn't there prior to the killing of Mohandas and Qasem Soleimani.
Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has arrived in Jordan on a two-day official visit. He was received on his arrival at Queen Alia International Airport by the King of Jordan, Abdullah ibn Al Hussein, and other officials. The Jordanian royal court said King Abdullah will hold talks with the Qatari Emir. It said the talks will cover means to advance bilateral ties and activate cooperation in economic sectors. In 2017, Amman downgraded diplomatic ties with Doha during the launch of the Gulf blockade. Sheikh Tamim will later visit Tunisia and Algeria. In China, 150 people have died in the last 24 hours from the new coronavirus outbreak, raising the death toll to 2,592. The National Health Commission says there are 409 more infections, pushing the total past 77,000. Beijing has allocated $14.16 billion to contain and curb the outbreak. More in this report.
The new coronavirus has tested China's resilience like few other things in recent times. But it's becoming a serious issue outside China as it spreads to new countries and threatens to take hold in places it is already present. There are now 1,200 cases spread across at least 30 countries. In South Korea, 161 more cases have appeared, taking their total to 763. The country has raised its disease alert to the highest level.
Especially in Daegu, a large number of confirmed cases have been reported. If we don't block the spread in the Daegu regions in an effective way, there is a high possibility that it would end to a nationwide transmission.
Italy has reported its third death in the outbreak, but the European Union says there is no need for a COVID-19 panic. Speaking to reporters at the G20 summit in Riyadh, EU Finance Minister Paolo Gentiloni said the bloc has full confidence in the Italian authorities.
What I would say on the subject is one, that EU has full confidence on the Italian authorities and on the decisions that they are taking. There is no reason for panic, and there is a need to follow the instruction of public and health authorities.
In the meantime, Turkey, Pakistan and Armenia have closed their borders with Iran after it reported 8 deaths and 43 confirmed cases of the virus.
In Italy, officials have cut short the Venice Carnival to control what is now the worst outbreak of the coronavirus in Europe. The authorities in Veneto region said the event will end 2 days earlier than planned. Italy has imposed quarantine restrictions in 2 northern hotspot regions close to Milan and Venice. Nearly 50,000 people cannot enter or leave several towns in Veneto and Lombardy for the next 2 weeks without special permission. Many businesses and schools have suspended activities, while sporting events have also been cancelled. The government says the army is prepared to step in if needed to enforce the parameter. Italy has reported the highest number of coronavirus cases in Europe at 132, with 3 deaths. In Germany, thousands of people in the city of HANAU have marched against right-wing groups and racism. Protesters held banners criticizing Germany's far-right AfD party for its xenophobic rhetoric. They marched through the city with German and Turkish flags as well as homemade signs. One read, "Together against hate, violence, discrimination and racism." Demonstrators carried photos of the victims of a recent shooting and paid their respects at vigils set up in front of 2 shisha bars. All 9 victims had immigrant backgrounds, including 5 Turkish nationals. Germany faces calls to step up efforts to track far-right sympathizers after the 2 shootings that killed 11 people 5 days ago. Former French Prime Minister François Fillon and his wife Penelope will on trial today over a fake job scandal. The 2017 scandal wrecked his run for president and opened the Élysée Palace door to Emmanuel Macron. Fillon's bid for the presidency unraveled after allegations he paid his wife hundreds of thousands of euros for doing nothing as his assistant. Last month, he said his wife had been an important employee and her importance will be proven at trial. But investigators estimate Penelope received 1 million euros from her husband's office between the early 1980s and 2013. Fillon is accused of embezzling public funds, a charge which carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison and 1 million euro in fine. His wife is charged with complicity to embezzlement and concealment of public money. US President Donald Trump has arrived in India today for his first official trip to the country. Earlier, US officials said President Trump will raise the issue of religious freedom in India with Prime Minister Modi. Ahead of Trump's visit, the US Commission on International Religious Freedom criticized India's new Citizenship Act. The commission highlighted the ruling BJP's anti-Muslim sentiment influencing the laws of the land. Trump will hold trade discussions with the Indian administration. In June 2019, US ended preferential trade status for New Delhi, ending duty-free access to some Indian goods. Ahead of his trip, Trump ended any hopes for a potential trade pact and said he was saving the big deal for later on. 30 people have been wounded in a bombing at a rally in support of Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Police said they have arrested 6 suspects. The authorities said the attack was probably carried out by Oromo Liberation Army, the armed wing of the Oromo Liberation Front opposition party. The attack happened as Ethiopia's electoral board is preparing for parliamentary elections scheduled for August 29. The formal campaign period will begin in May. Officials say Prime Minister Abiy was not present at the rally. In the US, 7 people have been wounded after a man opened fire at a Houston flea market in the southern state of Texas. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez says police have detained a suspect. Gonzalez said the arrested man told authorities the gun was in his pocket when it accidentally went off. He said the suspect's version of the incident does not match the evidence. Gonzalez said one man was struck by the bullet, which ricocheted and injured 6 others. He said the investigation is ongoing and there is no information on the motive. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to our news bulletin. A French street artist's interpretation of the Mona Lisa, made using 330 Rubik's Cube, sold for over $520,000 at an auction in Paris. Organizers say it was well above pre-sale estimate of up to $162,000. More in this report.
Invader is an anonymous street artist known for his mosaic tile work featuring pixelated versions of the 1978 Space Invaders video game. The RUBIK Mona Lisa was created in 2005 and is the first in Invader's Rubik Cubism series, in which he recreates well-known works.
You can distinguish it just from the shape. You almost don't need to see the details. You know it's the Mona Lisa simply because of the position, the composition, and that's what's magical. It's not the case with all of Invader's Rubik's works. Some of them are harder to get at.
The sale coincided with the closure of a blockbuster Leonardo da Vinci exhibition at the nearby Louvre Museum, the home of the real Mona Lisa. That show marked the 500th anniversary of the death of the Renaissance master.
They both embody their own eras. It's not the place to talk about Da Vinci's art here, but you could go on forever. Invader is in the same vein, someone who embodies his era.
de le dire. Invader, on est un peu dans
Invader, who defines himself as an unidentified free artist, wears a mask and insists on his face being pixelated for rare appearances on camera. He has a large following of fans who use a smartphone app, Flash Invaders, to snap pictures of his mosaics.
In Italy, German designer Philippe Plein has put on a dazzling spectacle as he presented his fall 2020 collection at Milan Fashion Week. Along with a glittery clothes line, the show also featured some US celebrities dressed in sparkling costumes.
Philippe Plein, known for his over-the-top runways, launched his latest winter collection at Milan Fashion Week. Gold and silver tones dominated the show. Hoodies and latex miniskirts were also a recurrent theme for the show, which saw models walk around a customized fighter jet and speedboat. The designer Pinkett Smith and models wore sparkly jerseys and sweatshirts inspired by Bryant's Los Angeles Lakers number 24 jersey. Plein told proceeds from the sales of the Bryant-inspired tops would be donated to Mamba and Mambasita Sports Foundation. The show also featured a performance by US rapper and singer Ty.
Stock markets across Asia are trading lower as fears over coronavirus spikes. Major stocks tumbled as investors rolled back their holdings. Seoul's Kospi has lost over 3.5% after South Korea raised coronavirus alert to highest level after spike in the cases. South Korea's Korean Airlines and Asiana Airlines shares dropped over 5.5% each, while Hyundai Motor stocks plunged nearly 4%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is trading over 1.5% lower. Shanghai Composite has lost a fraction. Meanwhile, international Brent crude oil price has plunged over 2% as global air travel falls amid coronavirus. A vast sandstorm from the African Sahara Desert has shrouded Spain's Canary Islands, disrupting over 800 flights. Spain's airport operator AENA cancelled, suspended or diverted all flights to and from the islands, citing low visibility. A state of alert was issued by the regional government on the weekend, with residents advised to stay indoors. The sandstorm is visible from space, with satellite images showing it engulfing with the islands off the coast of northwest Africa. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.